And so the message I have today is that for many of the challenges you face, it's really about people. It's about leadership outlook and behavior. It's about the culture that you create at the organization. It's about the relationships that you make and the power of human ingenuity. Because a positive mood state worker is more engaged. They bring more of their creativity to work. They have a different chemical flow than a depressed person. They believe in intrapreneurship, not entrepreneurship, and the customer feels the love. And it generates a virtuous cycle. I'll break it down to you at the chemical level. I mentioned this before. When you go to work and the sky is falling and all you hear is gloom and doom and you're getting beat up at work and you believe there's not enough to go around, you put that out there and you get it back and you get into this doom loop personally. Your body produces cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol's got a lot of bad health impacts, but it's got terrible brain impacts. Now, you've probably heard your whole life that we can leverage 10% of our brain's capacity. You've heard that, right? It's an average. It's chemically driven. When your body produces high levels of cortisol, your brain leverage capacity drops. It drops to 2 or 3%. Only in a Disney movie are desperate people actually good at what they're doing and win, okay? In the real world, when a person is depressed, they are less creative, more prone to make basic quality errors. I used to work for Ed Deming. He explained to me that sometimes it's not about fixing the production process, it's about fixing the people management process if we want to get people to come to work and try and not get injured on the job and to be high quality in their output. Now let me flip this around. Have you ever been stuck trying to solve a problem and you take a shower? And in the middle of the shower, it just comes to you like eureka. And the idea comes to you and it's unlocked, it's released from your subconscious. You ever had that experience? DHEA is the explanation for it. If you Google Heart Math Institute, they've done research on this idea. That when you're inspired, or when you put yourself in the right frame, in this case it was rhythm, warm water, and time, and tranquility. Runner's high is the same thing. Your body produces DHEA, an enzyme, and DHEA increases your brain leverage capacity from 10 to up to 30%. So when you're at work and you've gone through a training and development program that makes you feel more confident about your job, it raises your DHEA. When you're recognized or appreciated at work by your boss, it raises your DHEA. When you fill your mind with gratitude that your job is a get to and not a have to, it raises your DHEA. You show me a strong, inspired culture in battle in the market against a depressed culture, and I'll show you a company that's 10 times smarter than their competitors. It's chemical warfare out there.
In 1997, Tim Sanders was a crucial member of Mark Cuban's Broadcast.com, which went on to have the most successful opening day in IPO history. After Yahoo acquired the company, Sanders was tapped to lead the Value Lab, an in-house think tank that studied human behavior and relationships. His first book, Love is the Killer App: How to Win Business and Influence Friends, was a New York Times and global bestseller, featured in major media around the world. In 2002, he became Yahoo's Chief Solutions Officer, and in 2004, named its leadership coach. Today, he's the CEO of NetMinds, a next-generation publishing startup that's poised to revolutionize how media is produced and marketed. His latest book, Today We Are Rich: Harnessing the Power of Total Confidence, is an 800 CEO read and Inc. magazine bestseller. Its message that we need to bolster our business confidence is right for the times.
I know every single one of you, both in the room and watching this, every single one of you have had a struggle over the last 3 years because there's real scarcity in the world. But here's my fear. If we don't get back on track and start moving things forward and going back to what worked back in 2005 and 2006, we will all experience what I call personal recessions. Personal recessions is when a year goes by and you haven't grown as a person. You haven't grown emotionally, you haven't grown technically, you haven't grown in any way that you can measure. You define yourself as just getting by, just hanging in there, making it till the next year, can't wait for the economy to turn around. This is not the way to live. Let me give you an alternative mind diet that I've been on for several years, and I know a lot of other high-performance people that are doing this. Don't go online first thing. Delay gratification. You own technology. It does not own you. Take back your morning. I don't go online for the first 45 minutes. Don't do it. Did you know that instead, I'm going to give you an exercise later, if you did a gratitude exercise first to really focus yourself on your support system, and then spent about 30 to 40 minutes reading out of a book, which, by the way, we read books at 1/6 the speed as we look at stuff online. You don't read stuff online. You drink out of a fire hose online in scanning mode like some robot. No. If you take information in slow in the beginning, and you're reading confidence-building books, readers are leaders, books that either tell you where the future's going or how to be better at your job, if you do that instead for the first 30 minutes, you will fill that little mind up of yours, because it's littler than you think, with confidence-building material. Michael Pollan wrote a great book called In Defense of Food. And he was talking about the problem with steak in our culture. And he said there's nothing wrong with red meat, it's the portion size. He said the steaks are so big they push the vegetables off the plate, and it caused me to think about our mind. You know, we have two basic flaws. We think that we have 2 gigs of RAM, and we think we can do 3 things at once like our kids. You can't do it. Your mind doesn't have infinite RAM. You've got a little mind, the conscious mind. It's built for speed, not for storage. Okay? And you've got a huge subconscious that remembers everything you've ever done, and it coughs things up to you sometimes when it's on the tip of your tongue, unless you Google it, right? I want you to think of your mind as a 1999 old school laptop with about 80 megs of RAM, right? You run 3 applications and it's just buffering all the time. That's your mind, the average person. Okay? Listen, this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. That means you can stuff it full of something and eliminate room to store other things, or as Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said, if you can worry, you can dream. So I challenge you every day to spend the first 45 minutes loading either confidence-building material or slow food into your head and approach your day with a sense of confidence. Now, you may need to go to bed earlier and get up earlier, but you will learn very quickly that life goes on. And then when you stop checking your email first thing out of bed and stop exposing yourself to the randomness of the World Wide Web, you're going to immediately feel a sense of peace.
Tim Sanders is a trusted advisor to leading corporations and trade associations on how to build and maintain internal and external relationships. Prior to his keynotes, Sanders interviews your event stakeholders and combines his findings with research to craft a one-of-a-kind talk packed with relevant advice for your audience. He taps his exhaustive inventory of case studies to illustrate his takeaways. Time magazine featured his keynote prep style, calling it public consulting. Here's a clip where Tim customized his relationship keynote for members of the Association for Career and Technical Educators.
Emotional intelligence, of course, is your ability to maintain and control your emotions, as well as to properly decode and connect with the emotions of other people. What we've learned, though, is that it takes 2 things to be great at dealing with people. It takes a high level of emotional intelligence, but more importantly, it takes generosity. It takes the burning desire to give to other people. When you put emotional intelligence together with generosity, you've got people skills. And you create something, they call in the research, relationship masters. Because relationships are important. Relationships aren't just important to you, they're important to your students. In their career, they cannot be successful if they don't have relationship skills. A Yale study found out that over the course of 10 years, a relationship master will sell 40% more than an equally educated, equally experienced salesperson. Not because it's a popularity contest out in the market, but because the customer will give her better information because she wants her to succeed. We've learned that teachers that form relationships with students that are deep and mutually respect-based will generate more academic performance. That's the Emporia State College research, as well as University of Texas 1974 study learned that the teacher will receive performance from the student with a relationship because the student will want the teacher to succeed. And for parents in the room, you know what I'm talking about.
If you want to see true change happen in the lives of your audience, if you want powerful storytelling combined with a highly customized takeaway value, Tim Sanders will deliver, as he has for organizations around the world. He's one of the top-rated speakers on the lecture circuit due to his focus on takeaway value and moving his audiences to action.
Elmer Letterman is considered one of the greatest networkers in the history of Manhattan. In the mid-1920s, he opened up a very small insurance boutique. He and his partner sold life insurance. 1928 was a tough year for Elmer, you can well imagine. He had an idea, though, for building his business. He couldn't afford trolley car advertising, which was popular at the time, or even direct mail marketing. What he did instead was he took a novel approach to networking. Every Friday, he would organize a networking lunch at the Manhattan Four Seasons. So he'd take 3 people that he'd prospect for all week that he thought should meet, and they would be his lunch partners. So, for example, what's your name, sir? Brian. Brian is a chef. Elmer's known him for a long time. Brian lost his job because the restaurant on Broadway closed down, but you got an idea for your own restaurant, and you got a burning passion to open it. So he's going to invite you. Sir, what's your name? Ryan? Brian. Another Brian. You guys are going to get along. Brian is an honest banker that is still willing to loan money for startup ventures. You're important because you're the money piece of the puzzle. Finally, sir in the red, your name? Who? Rick. Rick is a construction executive around town with a fantastic reputation for building things on time and on budget with a great aesthetic. You're the missing piece of the puzzle. We now have the concept, we have the funding, and we have the execution, and that's lunch for Elmer Letterman. And he starts the conversation lending mutual credibility, provoking a conversation about an opportunity, and at 12:45 he pays the bill and leaves. And he never brings brochures to the meetings. Never sold a thing during those meetings. Rick, if you looked at him and said, you know, I've been thinking about buying life insurance, he'd say, I'm not here to sell you anything. You could talk to my partner next week. I'm here because the 3 of you should meet. He could come up to the opening of your restaurant 2 years later with a liner on the block, and he wouldn't expect a free meal. He'd stand in the back of the line, and when he'd see you, he'd shrug his shoulders and wonder how you did it. You see, Mr. Marcus read a story about him in a New York magazine and got on a train for 3 days to go interview Elmer Letterman, the greatest networker in history. And when Mr. Marcus shared this story with me, he said, son, do you know why Elmer Letterman was so successful? He says, do the math. The math of giving. You take 3 people and you put them together and you get out of the way and you give with no expectation. And you do this 50 times a year. And you do this for 10 years in a row in one city. And what do you have? You have a community that supports you, that will not do business with anybody but Elmer Letterman. And in 2001, he looked at me and said, son, goodwill is the original viral marketing.